very much everyone for joining. I think this is our first community call for the protocol community group. I hope you folks had a chance to look at what the group is about and so on. So the high level idea is, right, that we want to have a place that people who are interested in the Near protocol, either adding new features to it or just sort of following what is being discussed, what is happening there, what progress is being made in the different features, and just if they have ideas to suggest and they have feedback to provide on some features and so on. It's a place for us to come together and discuss these things. Anything related to Near protocol, should be interesting to discuss and so on. So this is what the goal of this group is. There's a couple other community groups that have been started on different topics. So we're going to be following them as an example and trying to model ourselves behind them. So I'll just do brief introductions for myself and Ori first, and then I would like to see some other people maybe if they want to introduce themselves. Ori, do you want to start or?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi, everyone. I'm Ori, and I'm a technical program manager in Pagoda. I am playing a big part in developer governance, which includes working groups and community groups, and just helping kind of connect people and ideas to make our ecosystem better. So super excited to be here and meet all of you. And yeah, I guess I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Ori. Yeah, so my name is Aki. I'm part of Pagoda. I'm in the contract runtime team within the protocol team at Pagoda, and I am the engineering manager there, and I lead the team of 4 engineers. And I've been at Pagoda for almost a year, maybe 9 months now, and yeah, I help manage the team and figure out what projects we should work on, what features we should work on, and those kind of things. And I also help organize community events and so on. For example, this one. Would someone else like to introduce themselves?
I can follow. So my name is Jacob. I'm in Pagoda as well. I'm one of the engineers of Aki's team. Joined Pagoda a bit more than 1 year ago. I like to put in my nose in all kinds of discussions that I don't belong into. But I am mostly in the contract runtime team. That's where I belong.
Can I follow too?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I'm Zaid. I'm near miner. I mine Near and I validate some contract in Near protocol. So nice to meet you all, guys.
Thank you, Jacob and Said. Anyone else?
Sure, I'll go next. I'm Michael. I work for Aurora. I did work for NearCore back in the day. But yeah, I'm a senior developer. I've worked on various things in the Near and Aurora protocols, and I'm pretty interested in seeing how they'll evolve. So happy to be here and nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else?
Oh, sorry. I think I muted myself. Hi, my name is Min. I am a software engineer from the core team within Pagoda. So similar to contract runtime team, we are part of the protocol team as well. So we work together to improve the protocols. And there are a bunch of interesting projects going on. I would love to hear people's opinions here on various subjects. Yeah, I look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, man. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. I'm Joe Spano. I'm part of the Ready Layer One podcast on Near. I'm also a developer, and we're building out a couple projects here on Near, and we run a validator as well under Ready Layer One staking.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Anyone else?
So hi, I'm Martin. I'm one of the developers on Pagoda. And one thing I would like to get from this group is how is the experience of developing Near from the outside? And like how we can help with documentation, tooling, and whatnot to make sure that it's as awesome as developing from within Pagoda.
Thanks, Marcin. Yes, that's a very important part of what we're trying to do at Pagoda. We want to encourage as much community around development around the protocol, not just using the protocol, but actually modifying it, contributing to it. And we're very much interested in knowing what the experience there is and how we can improve that and so on. So yes, that's a very important use case for us that we want to make sure is properly received and addressed. Joachim just introduced themselves on the chat. I think we may have covered everyone. Is there anyone that we missed or who would like to speak up, or should we move on to the next slide? All right, I think we can move on to the next slide then. So yeah, so the format that we'll follow here is pretty similar to what the other community groups are also doing. It's a free format discussion, right? So there's no, we are just meeting and chatting, and we can pick whatever topics we want. Ori and I tried to come up with some topics that we suggested, but we definitely do not need to stick to them. If somebody has some other topics they would like to bring up, that's absolutely fine. And just to really make it clear, right, Ori and I are just moderators. We're not here to lead. We're not making any decisions. We're not making any assessments. All of that is happening via other processes that we have. So if we decide to work on a feature or something, if somebody wants to propose a feature, all of those things, we will follow the normal channels. And we're just here to facilitate the discussions, help people meet and take notes and so on. So please do not take anything we say as something that is set in stone or anything. Everything is up for discussions. Yeah, so there will be a Twitter thread that we will start afterwards that we will use to decide what we when we wanna meet again, what topics we should cover, and so on. Anything else you want to add to this format, Ori, before we jump into the topics, or?
No, I think you covered it perfectly.
Cool, thanks. All right, so these are some of the topics that we came up with based on, some of them were sourced by me and some of them were proposed by some of the people in the call. I tried to put them in some random order, so maybe somebody would like to pick one of these topics or any other topic and start a discussion.
I'm happy to talk about synchronous WASM if people are interested in that. Yeah, cool. So the idea here, the motivation is we currently have sub accounts and we have cross contract calls, right? There are asynchronous ways for contracts to communicate with each other. But what we want to introduce with this change, and yeah, there's this nice forum thread on it. And I have a few other resources, which I'll link as well in a moment. But what we want to introduce is another way in which you can introduce WebAssembly code and attach it to an account, but be able to execute it synchronously. So the main ways in which I think this is different from what you can do currently on Near is, one, as of today, an account can only have a single contract, whereas under this proposal, an account would be allowed to have multiple, what we're calling submodules. Two, other accounts are able to invoke the contract, right? You can just cross contract call into any contract anywhere on the system. But we're proposing that for the case of submodules, I'll elaborate a little bit more on this later. For submodules, they cannot be externally invoked. It is just the contract itself is able to invoke its submodules, but they can't be directly invoked externally. And then the third thing that we want for submodules is that they are by default stateless. So they're just pieces of code. And we can talk about how they could interact with state in just a moment. But these are sort of the three ways in which I think they're importantly different from existing contracts today. So, okay, why would we want these things? What good features does this give us? So I think the main thing is this enables sort of untrusted pieces of WebAssembly to be integrated within a larger contract. So one example to think about is for a DAO. As of today, the proposals you can make are maybe a little bit limited, right? There's maybe a certain sort of pre-configured enumerated set of actions that users can propose and act on, say certain function calls or whatever. But this would actually allow you to do a more free-form proposal where you're basically proposing a whole piece of code, and you could actually deploy that whole piece of code and then vote on having it execute. And that might be a neat thing. For Aurora itself, this is useful because effectively what Aurora is, it's a VM inside a VM in the sense that we are accepting EVM contracts and executing them on top of Near. And as of today, we do that using an interpreter. But for us, it'd be really useful to be able to do it in sort of a more direct way if we could compile those EVM contracts to WebAssembly and accept them directly into the engine. Again, we're talking about sort of a trustless, or untrusted input of contracts, which is why we need these sort of like can't be invoked directly, stateless by default, etc. All these nice security features. But for Aurora, this is useful because it basically enables us to do this, VM and a VM thing a little bit more efficiently than using an interpreter. Presumably the same is true, although to be honest, I haven't looked into this super closely, but presumably the same is true for the JavaScript support as well, right? There's a JavaScript enclave, as far as I understand it, which is basically just like a compiled JS VM, which probably is mostly an interpreter, but maybe that's not true. I, again, haven't looked at it super closely, but I assume a similar sort of untrusted snippets of code could be useful for this. So a couple extra resources. Let's see, some stuff has already shown up in the chat here. Yeah, so there's the governance forum there. I wrote a document a little while back, which I'll also drop in the chat here for people to take a look at. Don't feel pressured to read it immediately or anything like that. Just feel free to look at it at your leisure. It's open for comments to people, so feel free to take a look at that. And then I'd also discussed this with Jacob before on Zulip, so I'll link to that message as well, which sort of has a text form of basically the things that I just said. But yeah, so the main, I guess, questions that I have for the community at large is, how useful is this for other projects? Are there other use cases that we haven't thought of before? How do people like the design in terms of actually being useful for developers, right? Like the way it's currently presented is maybe fairly limited in terms of, again, these sort of stateless, non-external snippets of code could be kind of challenging to develop around. It might be awkward in terms of a DevX, but again, I think the security considerations maybe outweigh that, but all of this I think is open to discussion.
Thank you for the nice introduction to the topic, Michael. Yeah. Any comments, questions?
Would be useful for zero knowledge protocols, like
Could
also
potentially be
compared
useful.
to
Yeah,
us.
that's a good point. For example, you could submit the proof as well, actually, I'm actually not sure. Do you have a sense of how it might be useful for zero knowledge?
Like compiling to WASM verification part, it just will be cost efficient to verify something on chain.
And so you're imagining having a single contract with multiple verifiers, and people can submit new verifiers is the idea, which is why the submodules are helpful.
Yeah, for example.
Cool, nice. I like that as well. Have to add that to my back pocket. Zero knowledge is trendy, of course.
And by the way, there's a zero knowledge community group in case anyone isn't aware. I'll post a link to their Telegram channel. So if anyone wants to bring this to that, I think they're probably going to have a meeting coming up soon as well, with a lot of very, very passionate zero knowledge people.
Yep.
Michael, have you thought about some sort of, I'm thinking about these classical capability-based systems, right? Where you could actually, when you provide the submodule to the system to execute, you can actually at the same time specify what types of accesses it should be allowed to have, so that we could make, if we were to implement this, we could enable more access, like talking to other contracts and so on. But if I do not trust the module, then I can prevent that, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think something like that is embeddable into the current proposal. It would be an interesting question whether or not we want to make it sort of first class, in the sense that, you know, when you deploy a submodule, do you declare capabilities at that time, versus the current proposal, the submodule always only has access to a single host function, which is to talk to the main contract of the account. So the main contract of the account can, of course, have arbitrary logic about capabilities, etc. But you sort of have to build it from scratch every time, as compared to embedding in the protocol. And yeah, I think the trade-off there is protocol simplicity versus DevX simplicity. And I don't exactly know where we want to draw that line, but I think as of today, I personally sit on the side of protocol simplicity in exchange for having a more complex DevX. But I'm also open to my mind being changed on that.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, I as my operating system background, I would always prefer keeping the protocol as simple as possible. So I agree with that. And I think we can also, if we could also maybe build this in an iterative way, right? If we could have it be backwards compatible somehow. So we build the most basic thing now first, see how well that works, and maybe get feedback on what's missing, and then extend it based on that. That would be another nice way to build it, right? So that way we can have something out there, build it already, see, experiment with it and expand.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I started working on a proof of concept implementation of this, but didn't quite get it finished. So I'm hoping to get it back up to the top of my to-do list pretty soon, and start working on it again. But yeah, I definitely agree. Having a working thing to get feedback on from actual developers would be amazing.
Alexander wrote on the chat, they propose a name for remote WASM code execution as the name for the feature. Would that imply asynchronous execution, Alexander, or?
Yeah, the idea is that synchronous is not a keyword. Like my first impression is that synchronous kind of, oh, this is synchronous, and I remember security issues with different contracts where you can batch a few actions into the single transaction and get some asynchronous, kind of vulnerabilities. And so I thought that's about security improvement, but it's not. And so I feel like this is more about remote code execution kind of, ability.
I mean, the fact that it's synchronous is important, though, especially for Aurora. It's maybe less important for the other use cases, but the sort of limitation on Aurora is that the EVM is synchronous. So we need all of the submodules that we execute to all happen synchronously and atomically. We can't be hopping over an asynchronous boundary. And well, I mean, like you could implement that, but it would get very complicated very quickly. So, but yeah, to your point, yeah, asynchronous coding is challenging and can lead to security vulnerabilities. So using this sort of a feature to build new near contracts that don't require sort of reaching out to existing things in the ecosystem, there might be this might be a more secure option potentially.
Yeah, all right. Anyways, my point is that synchronous seems like not a key feature. We could call it remote code. No, like code injection feature of the universe. All right, just speculating. Let's skip it.
I guess Alexander is trying to make the name future-proof, right? So we could start off if maybe it's synchronous today, but we decide to make it asynchronous later on, then we might have to change the name of the feature and so on. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's, I think, good feedback.
So I guess just clarifying like what the next steps here. So Michael, it sounds like you're still going to be working on a proof of concept and you're going to follow up on this initial proposal, or you're going to post it. Are you familiar with the gigs board, by the way?
No, not familiar.
Oh, okay. Okay, do you have the link to the gigs board? I can send it to you.
Yeah, maybe you can drop it on the chat and I'll.
Yeah. Basically, it's a place where we encourage people from the community to kind of post ideas in the early phases, proposals, and kind of invite people to comment on them. And then later, if it ends up being something that affects the entire ecosystem that goes through the NEP process, like it's a good place to kind of invite the appropriate working groups to take a look at that, but also eventually with matching projects with funding, like we're trying to use that space to kind of do the entire end-to-end from idea to execution to funding. So I'll drop the link here and you can see examples of other folks that have submitted some ideas and proposals and kind of, yeah, and I'm happy to share more information with you or anyone who, yeah, who wants to post their ideas in a more broad place. And I think the Gov place is a really good place for now to start, but we're trying to create a more centralized kind of platform to make it even easier for people.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, in terms of action items, I mean, I sort of assume that we'll end up, like we being Aurora, we'll end up being the main champions of this. So we'll work on a proof of concept. And yeah, I think when that's finished, we'll post about that, I guess, in this board that you're describing, and then hopefully move on to an official NEP from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to get this, see this move forward and reach completion. That'll be very cool. Does anybody have any more questions, comments on this topic, or?
Maybe just a couple ideas of how this is actually much larger than just what we're proposing here. Like the whole sub-component, or I think it's just components, is it called, in WebAssembly, is something experimental that wants to be stabilized for WebAssembly in general. And they have much more ambitious ideas what this can be. I think a good example here is you can write your code and depend on a library, and the library is not just a subcomponent. If you now want to upgrade the library, you can just upgrade that subcomponent and don't have to change anything of your current code. And this way you can kind of, if you define the interfaces in between these components properly and everything, then you can just update components and get the security features without having to recompile or anything like that. How this integrates into the blockchain is like you could have a locked component, a locked contract, but you could still exchange certain components of it. Of course, this has lots of security concerns of like, is it actually locked? Like, but what if you change some code of it? But there's some wider creativity that people can kind of deploy and how they can mix and match different components to make it a much more dynamic execution environment than it is today.
Yeah, thanks for the comment, Jacob. Indeed, right. WebAssembly is continuously evolving, and they have very grand ideas of how the different modules can work together and so on. And indeed, if such a feature will allow us to extract even better, such features will become even more powerful once as WebAssembly evolves and so on. So definitely we're all excited to see this development in WebAssembly. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Min raised the question in the chat. In the current design, can a locked contract deploy new submodules? What do you say, Michael?
It's a good question. Yes, the answer is yes. A locked contract could deploy new submodules. I guess it's maybe worth clarifying what we mean here by locked. I assume by locked we mean an account that has no full access keys. Even today, a locked account, at least locked in this sense, can even upgrade its main contract, because having no full access keys just means that no external user can force an action to happen, but you could still have logic in the contract itself to create a callback where basically it updates itself, right? This is the self-updating sort of pattern that we see in a couple different contracts throughout the ecosystem. You could follow exactly that same pattern with submodules, where even an account with no full access keys could have some built-in routine to accept and deploy them.
Cool. Any other discussions on this, or should we move on to another topic?
All right, well, thanks for giving a platform for this, and thanks everyone for your engagement. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the topic, Michael. I'm very excited to see progress on this. Yeah. These are some of the topics that we had proposed earlier. Would somebody like to pick one of these, or do they have something else that they would like to discuss?
Hi, this is Joe. I'm very interested in user onboarding. I was sure what that topic was supposed to be about, because we're doing a lot of stuff around that with our projects. So I was curious what the actual topic was for that.
I'm going to defer to Jacob to give us a high-level introduction to how we're improving user onboarding.
Okay, yeah, let's see what I can come up with here. I mean, there's several different projects going on right now that all try to improve user onboarding in the sum. So the individual component alone maybe isn't enough, but hopefully everything together. The goal is that we can create a system where a new user can be onboarded without needing a Near wallet already. I think that is kind of the main goal here. So ideally, you can have your grandmother that has never heard of crypto and they log into a decentralized app. They have an account that belongs to them, maybe somewhere in their local storage of their device. They have some keys. It's kind of like already theirs and nobody can take it away from them. But it's not recorded on the chain yet, or at least like not in a way that they have to pay for anything, right? And that this has many different complications. Usually everything you try to do ends up being exploitable in some way. Because if you actually store something on chain, then now, and you do it for free, then now someone can just spam whatever transaction you were trying to do for free. And now we have denial of service attack that we can't really defend. So that's like the very high level problem we try to solve. And I would say we have mainly 2 or 3, I would say there are 3 topics being worked on right now for this. And with 2 of them, I am familiar. And maybe I'm missing a couple of others. So probably the most important one is just a meta transaction proposal that Alexander, who's still in the call, actually worked on implementing it and put through with the NEP and everything. So maybe he can give some more details, but on a very high level, he just allowed to have a relayer that's kind of an off-chain component, some server, some service that can execute the transaction in the name of someone else. So now your grandmother can be that someone else that has the key in their local storage of an implicit account that hasn't even been created on chain yet, but she already can own Sweatcoin with this implicit account ID. And now she can send a transaction to the relayer, and the relayer will pay for the gas fees. The relayer can do some checks off chain, so that will be cheaper. They can do a couple of checks and see if they actually want to accept this and pay for it. Then they pay for it and it will be executed on chain. And then there's a couple of problems with that approach. So we try to make zero balance accounts that solve that problem. But zero balance account also just generally make it easier to onboard new users in a trustless way. The problem there is if you have today, if you create an account, you have to put some balance in it. You have to maintain a minimum amount of tokens. And if you do that, and someone else has the key to it, then that person can just delete the account and take whatever tokens are left in this account. So if we go back to the example of my grandmother maybe wanting to have this account created for her without her worrying about how she gets any near, then she can do that, that's fine, but now someone else is abusing this system and will create hundreds of accounts under their keys by the relayer, and then they just collect all the tokens. So with one proposal here, zero balance account, we removed the amount of tokens you need to maintain to 0. So now you can create an account for someone else, and you don't have to worry about the case that they will just run off with the tokens because there are no tokens to collect. And maybe the third way that that is being worked on that I'm not familiar with is, I would say, using your phone as your wallet, using the keys, that's kind of the hardware keys of your phone to be your wallet. I think maybe Marcin has more information on that. I don't really know what exactly is going on there and how exactly it works. But that's a summary of all the open questions. Maybe Joe, I think you raised your voice here. In what exactly are you interested here?
Yeah, no, great. I mean, I guess all of this, this is really all very interesting. So one question I kind of have is, so these zero balance accounts, are they named accounts or are they hex accounts?
Both, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So I guess just from a curiosity, how is the storage requirement removed? Like, where does that come from?
Very simply, we just increase the gas cost. So you actually still pay almost the same amount. It's less than before in total, but it's almost the same amount. But it's no longer tokens that you can receive. It's just we burn it.
I gotcha. Okay. That's really interesting. And then one of the things I think is being talked about too is improving how link drops work. Is that going to tie into this, or is that going to be completely separate?
I'm not quite familiar with how that ties into that. Probably there's some combination. Anyone in the call knows more about this?
Sorry, I don't think I do either.
I mean, I can speculate that now you can, again, you don't really have this level of trust that you need for link drops. At the same time, it's not quite as easy because for meta transactions, what you want with a link drop, ideally you have some QR code and that already contains the token sort of, or the payment you need to create your account.
Right.
And that has been done, I think, with like function access keys that has a specific amount of allowance. You can't really do that with meta transactions as it's proposed today, because you have to ask the relayer to execute this specific transaction for you, and you kind of have to construct it first. And it's, at least I don't know how it's done, or maybe Alex has some idea here. But I think these are probably still mostly different ways of doing it.
Sure. So who's the owner of the zero balance account? Is it the original contract, or is the end user technically the owner of it, but if they actually claim the account, then nothing comes with it? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's end user.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, you
I
do it in different ways.
This is all great. Yeah, no, I mean, anytime we can eliminate any kind of financial barriers to accounts, that's definitely a strong positive.
Can you provide a brief status for meta transactions and zero balance account, Jacob? Where are they in terms of being ready? Do you know?
So meta transactions is probably like the highest priority item for many people within Pagoda, as far as I know right now. So I'm working on the stabilization on the protocol side, and we are having daily updates on the progress across many teams. So we have things like the Explorer has to somehow display this data properly, like when we have meta transactions that looks differently. And the database that sits behind it, the indexer, needs to know how to handle this type of data. Meta transactions to be useful, you need some relayer implementation. So we have the integrations team working on actually implementing that and testing that out. And all these things have to come together. And our goal is to finish this as soon as possible. I can't really promise, or I don't know if it will make the cut for the next testnet release. We expect the testnet release towards the end of the month. If we don't make it, I think our usual cycle is 5 weeks. So then it will be delayed by like 5 weeks. You should expect it at the latest to be in that testnet release that comes afterwards. So then it will be the testnet, then it's a couple of weeks in testnet, and then it goes to mainnet. So yeah, assuming all the teams, nobody faces any major problems that we haven't surfaced yet, then we expect this to be on mainnet within, let's say, 2 months. And zero balance accounts, you also asked about that. I think we're going to merge the stabilization today or tomorrow. So that should be ready before meta transactions.
Could you elaborate a little more about what zero balance accounts look like from a developer perspective? Say I did want to create a new zero balance account. Is it, do I have to do anything special, or is it just the same create account action?
The way it's implemented now, it will replace the old system completely. So you will no longer have accounts that need balance from the beginning. One tricky part here is like, it's a threshold that we define for how much bytes you can use for free. That limit is, I think, 770 bytes. It's enough to store 4 full access keys and 2 function access keys without any methods in it. That's for free. As soon as you go above that, now you have to still maintain some amount of tokens as you did before. So from a developer perspective, the main difference is if you add more and more keys, maybe at some point suddenly it kicks in and it will no longer be a zero balance account. That's something you have to be that you have to consider. But we were hoping with this like 4 + 2 keys, hopefully all the general use cases should be covered. And if you want to do more complex stuff, at some point you have to actually pay the tokens.
Cool. Does this interact in any way with the registrar account or contract?
Sort of. We have to update it because there's some gas limits in there that won't quite work anymore. Some callbacks that will not have enough gas because now the create account uses more gas. But that's more of a technical detail. In terms of logically, it shouldn't really change it. As far as I know, I guess that's something for them to look at in more details, because you don't have to send an amount of tokens anymore.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was wondering, is if the registrar had some internal checks or something, minimum balances or whatever. But yeah, so I guess logically, like as a developer, once this feature lands, if I wanted to make an account for my friend, it's literally just I call the registrar, please make myfriend.near, and it does it, and it's happy. And I don't actually need to fund that account with any tokens. I just need to fund the gas that it takes to make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Did you see the feedback on the size in chat, Jacob?
Yeah, talk to Bowen or leave a message on the PR there.
Yeah,
he implemented it.
I was also I'm curious, right? If I'm not using all the free bytes for storing keys, can I actually upload a small WebAssembly module and maybe get creative with it and actually have a very small smart contract running that could do something useful and still be not have to pay for storage?
Yes, you could. You could even take it further. You can upload a larger contract first, create some state, and then deploy a smaller contract. And then in whatever state is left, if it's the sum of everything is still below the threshold, it's for free. I don't think there is any way this can be abused, but I don't think there's a good way of using it either. It's just kind of a quirk in the implementation. Yeah.
That reminds me of coding golf, right? Sorry, I interrupted someone.
That actually reminds me. I don't know if there's an official proposal for this anywhere, but this idea of being able to, instead of storing WebAssembly code in a contract, you store a pointer to where it actually lives somewhere else And if this is very small, this fits within your free byte limit, then maybe you could have non-trivial contracts even on these free accounts if they're reusing logic that already exists on chain.
Are you referring to like a global state implementation?
Yes, I think that is the name that it goes
Like
under.
global storage or something like
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite far in the future, or I don't know any specific work being done on it, but looking forward to that as well.
Cool.
Or you can combine it with your proposal, Michael, of sub-module execution. You can store the sub-module in the state, load that, and execute it.
Still has to be very small though, if we only have 700 bytes.
That's true, yeah.
177.
Yes. Did you have any more questions, comments, Joe, or anyone else?
I don't have anything else.
Right. We only have about 10 minutes left, but maybe we can cover one more topic if somebody has any proposals for what they would like to discuss.
I'm curious to hear people's thoughts. This is the first meeting. Like, what do y'all think? Do you want to do this again? If so, how soon? Like next week, in 2 weeks, like on a monthly basis? Just curious. Would love to hear any thoughts from anyone.
Yeah, personally, I think this was
I
great.
think that the introduction part could be reduced. Yeah, because we just spent maybe 10 minutes for that. Yeah. Also, we probably could go through the topics more, I don't know, sequentially with time limits, moderation thing. Yeah.
Yeah, good feedback. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Min, you had some feedback too?
Yeah, so kind of similar. I think this was great. I would say personally, I think maybe weekly is too much for me, but something like bi-weekly, I would totally be up for that. And I think just make it more efficient. Maybe we want to like propose topics beforehand and share it with the people. So for example, like if I can read the docs that's shared on this call beforehand, I think that would be I would be able to contribute more, or at least even if I read the docs before, at least I need some, maybe it's a long time ago and I want to refresh my memory on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's great feedback. Yeah.
Any other comments?
I just have a small comment. I think as someone who's not working on the protocol directly as a outside developer, it's nice to be able to connect with both inside and outside developers and be able to talk at a low level of actually how these things are being addressed. Sometimes just reading stuff on the boards becomes tricky because you just get caught up in trying to follow threads and everything else, but to actually hear it spoken about, be able to ask questions is really valuable. So I love the idea of being able to like prep a little bit beforehand and say, okay, we're going to talk about this, be prepared for some questions and things like that, and then be able to really interact like this. This is great. And then I'm also happy to, I know we can get to today, but I'm always happy to talk about my experience as a developer on the ecosystem too. And so hopefully for those in Pagoda can kind of gain some value from us on the outside as well.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yes, absolutely. I think we would love to hear more about contract developer experience, right? I mean, in many ways, you folks are the customers, right? So, if we it's great to hear feedback on how you are using the API that we're providing, what we can do to improve it, and any feedback there is absolutely yes. Yeah, that will be very valuable. Or yes, on the chat, would you be okay with adding that as a topic for the next meeting?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to talk about that kind of stuff whenever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome, nice. Joe, I will find you on Telegram as well, and I'll make sure to send you the exact date and to make sure it works for you.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Cool.
All right.
And
Sorry, go ahead, Ori.
I was just reading the last comment from Zaid, who seems to be also interested. So yeah, I'll follow up with you, Zaid, as well. If you all, I'm assuming you all are in the protocol community group Telegram channel, but if not, this might be a good plug for it. Yeah, Aki, do you want to maybe speak to it, and I'll get the link while you're speaking to it?
Yep. So we've started a Telegram, or there was a Telegram community group, and please join. Ori will find the link for it. So this is where we will be sharing updates on when the meetings are being planned, and if you have any topics to suggest, and other people are also just posting things of interest. Like, this is a free form discussion forum as well. So if there's anything you want to discuss and so on. We also have a Zulip channel that is used quite heavily for protocol development, and people are encouraged to join that as well. And over there, you can actually really, see actual development taking place, people having live conversations about what features they're building, what problems they're hitting, and it can be quite exciting. And you can come there, just ask questions if you have any questions or propose features and stuff, and you will get you will generally get a very good engagement, and people will be happy to hear from you and so on. So yeah. All right, I think we're out of time now. So Ori, you propose March 1st as the next one?
Yeah, it's exactly 2 weeks from today, same time. Does this time work for everybody?
For what it's worth, 2 weeks from today is ETH Denver, so people
yes.
may or may not be busy.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
Maybe when is ETH Denver over? Do you know?
I've got in my calendar as being the 1st through to the 5th, so that the 8th should be fine.
Yeah. Should we do the 8th then?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Aki, for all the work to get everyone together here.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.